We don't need people tacking our Juneteenth onto all of these other things. Have y'all noticed that? Do they do that with other groups in their celebrations? Do they tack on other things to the Puerto Rican Day Parade? Do they tack on other things to the Caribbean Day Parade? Do they tack on other things to St. Patrick's Day? On St. Patrick's Day, they're like, everybody, you gotta wear green. That's it. With us, Juneteenth, they got pink colors, rainbow colors, trans colors, all of this stuff. They want to attack all of this stuff to Juneteenth. We're not the muse for everybody. You're not going to use us as muse anymore, right? I saw some stuff out here in D.C. Celebrate Juneteenth and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We're not having breast cancer, but this is about us and our Foundation of Black American Lineage. We are good enough. Now, family, we also got to pay honor and respect to the brothers and sisters in Tulsa who received a harsh injustice. We're still standing with them. We haven't forgotten about them. That was a horrible injustice, and we're going to stand up for them. Because the white supremacists like to use the excuse, well, the people who were harmed, they're not here anymore. Those people stayed here for over a century to see that justice is going to be served. And we're going to take the baton and make sure that that happens. This country has created and committed war crimes and paid the people they committed war crimes against. In World War II, when they bombed Europe, did they have a Marshall Plan that they gave them money for? Did they give money to Japan? They even gave money to Vietnam. They gave money to the Iran hostages in 1979. You understand that? They gave money to the victims of 9/11. But when it comes to us, everybody wants to act like they don't know how to give us the compensation we're supposed to get. And we're saying no more. Now, family, we're not going to take any excuses that people give us when it comes to reparations. When it comes to giving us our reparations, everybody wants to play dumb and ask these dumb questions like, Tariq, you in this reparations, listen, why should I be punished for something that I didn't do? Well, here's the thing. We, black people, we get punished for stuff we didn't do all the time. Every time there's a crime in Chicago, we all get blamed for it. We ain't got nothing to do with that. If there's a crime in New York, they start stopping and frisking everybody. We all get punished. And also, us getting reparations, look at how the language is. Punishment. That's not a punishment. If we get reparations, that's going to stimulate the economy. We're not foreigners, so we're not going to send money outside of the United States. That money is going to bounce within the United States and stimulate the economy. They know that. See, they know the temerity that we have as Foundation of Black Americans, because the excuse they like to give, well, if we give y'all the money, you guys are just going to just buy rims and weed and
Many black people in the United States have given up on getting slavery and land reparations, and that's precisely what every United States government has always wanted. However, you will be surprised to know that those black people who did not give up and collectively reached the Supreme Court got billions of dollars in reparations. Back in 1999, in the case of Pigford versus Glickman, the Supreme Court ordered the U.S. government to pay $1 billion to thousands of black farmers. Interestingly, those black farmers who were not covered later sued again and got an additional $1.25 billion in reparations. Again, in 2010, in the case Cobell versus Salazar, the Supreme Court ordered the U.S. government to pay $3.4 billion to the affected black people and Native American tribes. The point is, even though the United States does not want to pay reparation to every black person in the United States, it does pay slavery reparation to those who fight for it. So how can you get slavery and land reparations through the U.S. Supreme Court, like thousands of black people who have already got it? That's something the United States governments do not want you to know. Let's get started.
The Black History Archives.
In the United States, the conversation
Let me say this before we get started. My mic wasn't even on. It was muted. Didn't even know that. Shout out to the family. What up, black folks, FBA, B1, to all y'all, and to any allies we may have and that we will gain, because we are the culture and we can influence the world to ride with us no matter what we're doing, whether it's negative or positive. So understand that we kind of seen that in the Drake Kendrick Lamar battle. The people are going to go with whoever we co-sign. Whatever we say goes as far as global culture. There's no other culture that is globally as influential as what we create as FBA. That's just a fact. You can't name me another culture that's globally renowned like hip hop or anything else that we do and say. So because of that, we could use our influence even to get people to ride with us on the reparation side. Now, let's not get it twisted. We do have a lot of detractors. We do have a lot of people that like to get in the way, whether they be white supremacists, whether they be tethers, whether they be coons. Some of them are in government, but we also have allies. We also have our movement resonating to the point to where we do have people in government. We do have people outside of our lineage that will push reparations for us. And if we leverage our politics and our influence properly, and if we all get on code, we will see other people get on code with us. So that's kind of what this video is about. So I am going to show you like some of the detractors that we do have, just to give you an example of what we're up against. I'm also going to show you some of the allies that we've been creating, just so you'll see what we have potentially to gain. And I'm also going to show you, I'm going to share with you this experimental project that happened in Denver, Colorado. Shout out to Shane Nkrumah, aka Paris LaShawn, or Jesse Paris, excuse me. Because in Denver, they did a UBI program, which came back with very successful results. Now, when I was in college, I read a study that showed that when you give people who in need help, it actually stimulates the economy. It actually helps the local economy with 11-to-1 ratio on an average. Meaning that, you know, if you do preventive or early intervention with certain dynamics in locally, this study was, it's going to help the city out. So in other words, giving UBI when people need it, giving cash payments, giving assistance to people actually helps the economy the same way reparations would also help the economy. The problem is, because it doesn't help individual representatives of the government, it basically helps the city government, county, state, or federal government as a whole, not individual representatives. So individual representatives aren't really incentivized to push these type of programs because they're greedy, right? They're going to take the money from lobbyists or whatnot who benefit off of our demise more so than what would actually help the general economy. So I'm going to show you a little bit something like that. Let me see what we got going. So yeah, you know, I want to just say this. We are starting to gain a lot of momentum in this. Now it's time for us to tighten up, refine, and really focus on different ways to continue to move the needle. But of course, one of the first things that we do, that we're doing now, that we've been doing the last few years, is gaining the awareness, making sure that all of us are on code and that we're spreading the awareness of the need for reparations and gathering and supporting endeavors to help push forward with our reparations demand. So here we go. Let's go.
Conversation about reparations for Black Americans has long been a contentious and emotionally charged issue. Despite increasing awareness and advocacy for reparations, many Black people have lost hope in ever receiving compensation for the centuries of slavery, systemic racism, and discrimination that have plagued their community. This disillusionment stems from a belief that reparations will be granted without any struggle.
So as we know, it will not be granted without any struggle, but I wanted to take the time to give a shout out to Black History, the Black History Archive. Make sure you subscribe to that channel. Make sure you like his video. That's where this the video I'm using from Black History Archive. Supreme Court giving billions in slavery and land reparations after electoral. What to do to get it? There we go. Let's get it.
However, history shows that meaningful change rarely comes without a fight, especially when the entire system resists acknowledging and rectifying past wrongs. A significant portion of the Black community has become skeptical about the likelihood of receiving reparations. This skepticism
Look, skepticism is part of the game, y'all. That can't deter us from our mission. I mean, people were skeptical if we're even going to ever get out of slavery. Remember that. We had people that were skeptical. We had people that thought it would never happen. Therefore, they didn't join the process to make it happen. So that's never stopped us in the past. There was skepticism in the 60s. People were skeptical if we were going to get the right to vote. People were skeptical if we're going to get just basic civil rights bills passed. People were so skeptical that in every movement that we've ever had that pushed us forward, we've always had pushback, starting from those that looked like us. The pushback has always been there anytime we try to achieve anything. There's always been them house Negroes that go against the grain, run and tell massa or tell us that we can't do it. It'll never happen. Them folks, there ain't nothing wrong with what we doing right now. We eating good. We got an extra piece of chicken last Sunday. You know what I'm saying? That we've always had these type of Negroes amongst us. Now what we're doing with our delineation, which is so important, is we're separating. We should have done this a long time ago. It's not just about separating from immigrants who we call tethers because they undermine what we're doing. We have enough of that, but we also have to start first with those from our own lineage that go against the grain. We got to identify them and separate from them. Let it be known they do not represent us, nor do they have any influence on what the grassroots is actually doing. No change comes from the top down. It always comes from the grassroots or underground. That's what that means. So what we do on the underground resonates to the top, just like hip hop. The same influence that we have that came from nothing. Came from people on the streets just doing their thing. And we've always been influential like that. So that's part of what this delineation is about. It's about us controlling our own narrative. It's about us using our own influence and power to achieve goals that's good for the masses of our people, not just for certain individuals. This is why they're trying to throw us off track. This is why they want us to support either Palestine or Israel. They want us to use our resources, our influence for uses outside of ourselves. This is what the delineation process is about. It's about the separation that we need to purify and refine ourselves as FBA. So other people can't use us the way they have in the past. LGBT rights, they got their rights because of us. They could have never been accepted as a legitimate civil rights group if they didn't use us as their mascot. Who would have validated the LGBT group, which is mostly well-to-do white men? Who would have validated them as a civil rights group for them to be able to usurp the 1964 civil rights law if we weren't the mascot? Feminism the same way. The Democratic Party, we carried the Democratic Party for the past 50, 60 years. So now we're delineating, saying, now we're going to use our own political power, our own economic power. This is what's so important about the reparations movement and why so many people hated on the rally for reparations in DC. They started pocket watching. Well, why Tariq raising $50,000 for it? Man, because it costs money to put on productions like that. But that's something that's necessary to raise the awareness so that we can start gathering together as a people. It also showed how on code our people were, that we could use the twos and fews to help fund our own endeavors. And this is why people are coming against it, because they understand, especially these tethers, they understand that if we start doing for ourselves and separating from them, they can't influence us in a negative way. It also means that they're going to have to stand on their own business without us. It also means that they won't be able to tether onto things that's supposed to be for us. That's why FBA is important. This is reparations for those descendants of slavery here in the United States, not in Jamaica, not in Puerto Rico, not for racism, not for everybody, but for us. And the fact that they come against us, I don't want to go on a rant, but the fact that so many of these other groups that may even look like us will come against us, will come into our space to discourage us or to dissipate the energy or to neutralize the movement, shows just how much they don't really back the idea of Pan-Africanism. If they really backed Pan-Africanism, they would be backing us in our reparations. So don't let them fool you with that bullshit. If they was really about Pan-Africanism, they would never stand in our way when we're going for something to benefit us. Because they would want for their brothers as they want for themselves. And they would understand that if we're more empowered, seeing that we have done everything to help empower Africa and the Caribbean, seeing that we've reached out an olive branch for over 100 years, seeing that we are the reason why they even come here from the countries that they flee from, seeing that we're the only reason why they're even accepted here, they would want to empower us because they know it's been reciprocal from us to them. But to them, to us, it has never been, or it usually hasn't been. Anyway, let's get back to this. Let's go.
Partly arises from the misconception that reparations should be granted automatically as a moral and historical imperative. However, this expectation overlooks the reality that those in power, many of whom benefit from the status quo, are unlikely to voluntarily dismantle the structures that sustain their privilege. Consider the example of the reparations granted to Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. This illustrates a key point. Reparations were not handed to them without a prolonged and arduous struggle. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which provided a formal apology and financial compensation to Japanese Americans, came after decades of persistent advocacy, legal battles, and public awareness campaigns.
Listen to what he just said. So the Japanese that were putting in those camps in the 40s, they didn't get the reparations to the 80s. And they got it in part by different things like awareness campaigns. So think about it. We ain't really been pushing for reparations for that long for how far we've got, which is why the pushback is so great. It didn't really take us that long. We ain't really been pushing steadily, standing on our square about reparations. Not for no 40 years. We've really only been doing it for the past 4 or 5 years. And we've made a lot of gains in that small amount of time. I'm only saying that to say that there is a process. We are going to have to fight. They're not going to give it to us out of the kindness of their heart. We're going to have to take actual tangible actions to get this, but we can do it. It's going to take a fight. None of these other reparations that have been paid to other groups happened overnight. It took the Japanese 40 years, over 40 years, before they were actually paid the reparations due to them for their mistreatment during World War II. That was in the 40s. So that should just be a little bit of inspiration to know that if we keep our foot on the gas, we will get to where we're trying to go. That's a fact. Let's go.
This hard-fought victory underscores the necessity of sustained collective action in achieving justice. The resistance to paying reparations for slavery and systemic racism is deeply entrenched in American society. Many politicians and segments of the population hold the belief that America was established primarily for the benefit of white people, which perpetuates a reluctance to confront and rectify historical injustices against Black people. This ideological barrier makes it unlikely that reparations will be granted without significant pressure from the affected communities. That's when Black people should consider the second option, which is to make the United States pay slavery reparations. Instead of simply demanding slavery reparations on various platforms and not getting any results, Black people in either the whole United States or in every state should unite. They should bring a class action lawsuit against the United States government, taking it to the Supreme Court and making it liable to pay slavery reparations.
Boom. There it is. Now, in order for something like that to happen, like I said, the first stage of this battle is raising the awareness, which we've been doing for the past few years, right? That's why notable people from our community are important. That's why the Black Authority, Tariq Nasheed's, those of us in the new Black media, whether we're participants or we have platforms, that's why it's important for us to keep this message resonating so that we can raise the awareness to all FBA, all 50 or so million of us being on the same page, willing to put in some work and make our voices known. That way it'll be that much more of a seamless transaction to go from that to putting these lawsuits on. We can do this on a city level, on a state level, on a federal level. Another piece of the puzzle that I believe will help is to identify those companies that are still in operation today that got their money from the slave trade. I'm talking about some of these banks, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, US Bank, some of these insurance companies, was that AG? Forgot all of them, but Aetna, I think. A lot of these insurance companies that came up because of slave labor, these banks, these railroads, some of these clothing companies that came up because of the cotton. There's a lot of different industries and a lot of different corporations that exist right now that made their money from slavery. If we include them in the lawsuit, if we make sure we identify who they are as well, some of these institutions, the Catholic Church, etc., then I think that would help dissipate some of the resistance than just saying it should come from the federal government, even though they owe us, right? Because that way it spreads the liability around in a way that people can't just say, oh, that's not right, that you're going to use our taxpayer money. Even though everybody benefited from slavery, that's why this country is as wealthy as it is. Even though a lot of our money is going, a lot of our tax-paying dollars are going to Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan and other countries and immigrants. But anything that helps dissipate some of that resistance and to identify those who are actually responsible, I think will go a long way. And I think that that should be a tactic. But we have to get the word out. But then we have to take class action lawsuit. We have to paper up some of these lawyers or call on the ACLU and other advocacy groups. We've already done the numbers. The study's been done. And we got to put that pressure on. Like I said, we have to get the answer soon. So we've seen in different states, we've seen different programs put together to try to address the reparations issue. Even if they haven't been perfect, at least it shows that what we're doing is starting to gain traction. So as we do that, we'll apply more pressure. We'll get closer to our goals. But the first campaign is raising the awareness, and that's what we're doing right now.
It's unlike the first method where only demands are projected. It's the way to literally make the United States pay the slavery reparations using the legal bases that seem to protect everyone's rights. For Black Americans to secure reparations for slavery, they need to unite across every state and file a class action lawsuit. This legal strategy would force the U.S. government to pay reparations, as the courts would mandate it. Unlike previous efforts where demands for reparations could be easily ignored by the government, a unified legal action can't be dismissed. The U.S. Constitution guarantees the protection of every citizen's rights, and this must be upheld. However, unity among Black Americans is essential.
That's facts. So first is the unity, and then the awareness. Now think about how far we've come without even filing that lawsuit first. I mean, think about it. The more awareness we have, when we have more of our people and other people that also want to help support our claim for reparations, and by the time it comes to file that lawsuit, we have that much more leverage. And filing the lawsuit's important because this goes to the Supreme Court. And if they deny it in the Supreme Court, now they lose credibility internationally. See, there are UN participants. There are other nations worldwide that know about our grievances and that have pushed for America to do right by us. So those will be allies as well. I'm talking about not actual governments. Let me show you something. Let's go ahead and go to Twitter real quick, man. Look at this right here. This right here dissipates the argument that it would be too expensive for them to pay the reparations. This is something that was Midnight, aka Soul Child, posted. I don't know when he posted it. Let me see something. Oh, damn it! What the hell? Hold up, man. What's going on? Damn, my shit's tweaking. What's really? All right, there we go. So here we go. Let's look at this. So America can afford $2.5 trillion a year for Black Americans for reparations. To break it down, that's $62,000 a year for each Black American. Anti-Black racism cost the U.S. $16 trillion this century alone. Here we go. Racism has costed America $16 trillion this century alone. So if they're saying this century alone, they're only saying the last 24 years. So the last 24 years, racism has cost $16 trillion. That's crazy. So in other words, they're saying it's more cost effective to just go ahead and pay us the money. Plus, as we know, it's going to stimulate the economy, right? Paying reparations will actually be a benefit to the economy of the United States. And we know that the economy of the United States is it's been tanking for the past 20 years, right? So there's that. Now, do we have any allies? Well, let's look at what the Chicago mayor said about reparations when he was on Fox News. Let's look at it.
All right. Well, progressive Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson says the government has to get more involved in ending the city's out-of-control crime crisis by paying out reparations. Since Johnson took over from his predecessor, Lori Lightfoot, murders have dipped in the Windy City. But total violent crime, robbery, carjackings, aggravated battery, all up over the past year.
Now, to be fair, if you're going to say the crimes that they mentioned are all crimes of, survival, right? Those are crimes that any poor community commits. I know they like to put it on us like, oh, we're just doing all these crimes. Most of the crimes that black people do are crimes of survival. Now, you want to talk about Chicago crime. What was the crime like in Chicago in the 20s and 30s and 40s when all those mobsters were out and about during the Prohibition days? Were they criminals because they're innately criminals? Did anybody say that's white on white crime and these guys, these Italians are innately just criminal by nature? These Polish and these Jews are just innately criminal. These Irish are just innately criminal. Or did they understand that anywhere you see poverty, you're going to see crime? Anywhere where you see where there's a lack of opportunity, there's going to be crime, specifically crimes of survival, robberies, thefts, etc. It's no different for any other people. So yeah, if you pay reparations, if you put money into the economy, if you put money in these communities and open up opportunity, you're going to see crime go down. That's just common sense.
Now claiming reparations payments to descendants of slaves, he says will help address Chicago's, quote, cycle of violence. Watch.
What I've built within these last 7 months, in order for us to have a better, stronger, and safer Chicago, it really requires the full force of government. We have stood up an entire office dedicated to reentry. So individuals who are returning to our communities who have been incarcerated because of failed policies, we'll have a welcoming space for them. I've added a $500,000 for restoration and reparations to address, again, the cycle of violence, which looks like school closings, closing of mental health facilities, of which I've invested in now. And so in order for us to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago, it requires investments. And that's what.
Now, look, for all the talk that they say about how reparation cash payments won't help, we need education, we need housing programs, we need different facilities to help with homelessness. We need this, we need that. If they believe that that's really the path, why are they not investing in these things across the board? Shout out to the mayor of Chicago for doing that. Even though we also know that he's been doing a lot for the immigrants that's been undermining us, or at least the last mayor did. I don't know if that's this particular mayor, but if these white supremacist talking points are true, if they believe them to be true, why aren't they investing in the things that they say would actually help, since they don't want to give the cash payments? Since they're so pro-education, why don't they make education more accessible for poor people, for black people? Why don't they say, hey, look, the cash payments ain't going to work. You can go to vocational college. You can go to a university free of charge. Hey, we know cash payments isn't going to work. You're just going to waste the money. But, we're going to give you free health care. Oh, these cash payments, that's just going to be too divisive. But we're going to give you a program to be able to own a home, since we know home ownership is the most common way generational wealth is handed down. Look, we're not going to get there without a fight. We're not going to get cash reparations without a fight. We're not going to get anything without a fight. So we have to be determined, willing, and able to sustain the fight. And like I said, the first path is raising awareness. The more people, the more FBAs that are participants and aware of the need for reparations and supporting the demand for reparations, the more genius amongst our people will start to flourish, and people will start, doing different things to add on to this fight. And we'll start getting allies in political space, social space, and even from outside of our lineage.
What this budget has done.
Okay, Julie, let me get this straight right now. Okay, so he's asking for billions of dollars from the federal government to deal with the migrant crisis in Chicago. But let's hand out money for reparations because that's going to fix the crime problem. I'm not sure what the disconnect here is.
Okay, first.
So let's just be clear. When you give opportunities, crime is less. So for all the look at Chicago and what's going on in Chicago that they always want to use against us, what's the solution? The solution is obviously to make opportunities available for Black people in Chicago. Make housing available for Black people in Chicago. Make access to economics available. These things will, of course, lower the crime. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. But these are the kind of things that we have to make clear. We have to dissipate all these different arguments. We have to neutralize all these anti-reparation arguments. But let's get to this one real quick. So that was by Afro Elite. That was a tweet that Afro Elite tweeted a couple of days ago. This one right here is coming from Nas Escobar. This is a tweet from 2 days ago. And this is Byron Donalds uses buzzwords like generational wealth, but he's still a Black immigrant who is against cash reparations for slavery. He is no different than the Black immigrant Candace Owens. They are both anti-Black Americans. Check this out.
And Trump. Dr. King said at the tail end of his life, he said, we're going to Washington to get our check. You understand? So now, what is your position on reparations?
Very direct question. This brother said he quoted MLK, who was definitely pro reparations, and he just asked, what is your position on reparations? This is the response.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you. We can all be quiet and let them answer. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be direct. First of all, I'll be direct with you. I'll be. You don't want to hear Jim Crow. I'll be direct with you. I don't believe in reparations. I don't. Well, then you don't.
He said he don't believe in reparations. We're going to keep listening because we're going to see where his lineage comes from for him to not agree with reparations for foundational Black Americans. Let's hear it.
In the Black community. That's
and you hear what they say, like, then you don't support the Black community. And this has to be the standard. This has to be the litmus test. No matter who you are, if you don't support reparations, you can't represent us anymore. That's what this delineation is about. Because we have a lot of these immigrants that may look like us that don't agree with reparations, but they're supposed to be representing us.
I will tell you, brother, in the hat with the glasses on, that's not true. What I will tell you is that there's a question if you're going to get into the full economics of reparations right now. Question number one, of all Black people in the country, how many of them are actually descendants of slaves? Because you've had a lot of immigration over the last 100 years in America.
That's not a reason not to pay reparations, first of all. So he's saying that because in the last 100 years, there's been a lot of immigration, and really there ain't been a lot of Black immigration for 100 years. It's been more like 50 years. But the simple solution is, well, the immigrants don't deserve reparations. We're going to do reparations for those who have been here long enough to have descendants of slaves. That means the FBA, that means the foundational Black Americans, those of us whose lineage goes back at least to the 1870 census, because the 1870 census was done in the throughout the 1860s, meaning that if you're on those documents, if you can prove that, that means that you have a legacy, unfortunately, of slavery in your family. So people who came after that aren't eligible, as he's going to identify himself as being a Jamaican immigrant. So he's not eligible. So it's nothing for him to say he doesn't agree with reparations.
Of American slavery. There was slavery in the Caribbean. The one brother came up, he said that he's first generation of the brother in the Congo because his parents came from Jamaica. My grandmother is from Jamaica. So my grandmother's Jamaican. I know exactly what you're talking about. My mother was born in the United States. I'm born in the United States. So this is a fundamental question. You a black man, I'm a black man. Am I eligible for reparations right now? I would say the answer is no, I'm not. Because my family is from Jamaica. My father.
There you have it right there. And you notice most melanated Negroids who are against reparations, they don't qualify for reparations. If they qualify for reparations, they would be pro-reparations. So there's the disconnect. There's why we have to delineate, and there's why our unity comes before anything else. Because we're going to have people that's going to be detractors who don't support reparations for the simple fact that they don't get it. Unfortunately, disproportionately, they're typically in positions to advocate against reparations. Those are the kind of people like the Coleman Cruz, who they'll put in front of the Senate to say that black people shouldn't get reparations, but they're not even qualified because they're not FBA. So this is why the delineation is very important, so that they can't cherry pick representatives for us who aren't of us.
Panamanian. His grandparents were born in Panama. My father immigrated to the United States. So does that make me eligible? So you got to go through all of that. That's step one. Step number two, slavery under federal law was ended in 1865. The Jim Crow era ended, obviously, with the 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights, etc. The fundamental question is, you've now had 3 generations of black people come up in the United States. As a black kid today, does he get reparations? Third question. Hold on now. Third question. You got a lot of other people in the United States. Asians, are they responsible for the cost of the slave trade? No, because they're of Asian descent. People of Indian descent. People who are Hispanic in the United States, the largest growing population in the United States. And of course, the dominant population is still the white population. But even in that, it's not just Southern whites that were plantation owners from their grandfathers. So if you're going to talk about reparations today, what you're talking about is taking money from other Americans, which quite rightly, the pain and the toil that did happen in America through slavery, through Jim Crow, but now you're asking Americans today and in the future to pay that bill. Is it that bill? Is it their bill, Americans today, to pay?
I'll answer that. So when you speak about the Asians that's immigrated here, are they responsible for slavery? No. But do they benefit from the wealth that was created during slavery by our ancestors? Yes. They benefit from that. They wouldn't be here if America was a poor country like it was before we built it. And that goes for any of these immigrants. They would not be here. See, no one raises these questions and say that, hey, is it fair for our taxpayer dollars to be going to Israel, a foreign nation that's participating in a genocide? You don't get that pushback. People aren't making that argument. When it's going to Ukraine to intervene in stuff that's not our business, you don't get that pushback. When it comes to some of these immigrants that are illegally here, that are getting $1,000 a week, that are getting housing projects built for them, apartments, complexes built for them, you don't have the pushback. But when it comes to those who actually built the wealth of this nation, all of a sudden there's pushback. And the first line of pushback comes from people that look like us. So yeah, he says that his family comes from Jamaica. So he's up here caping, saying that we don't deserve reparations. It'd be too hard. What about this and that? Jim Crow. What if you came here during Jim Crow? Do you deserve reparations? No. Reparations is for those whose family suffered slavery. But let me make another point. How many Japanese people do you think, how many Japanese Americans or other Asians, even if they weren't Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, how many of them do you think got up on platforms and said Japanese don't deserve reparations for what they went through by being put into internment camps in the 40s. Do you think there was other Japanese people that were like, no, we don't deserve that. That was 20 years ago. Forget about it. Because remember, it took them 40 years before they got the reparations. They had to push for 40 years before they got any payback for what happened to their ancestors. But do you think other Japanese people jumped in the way and said, no, we don't deserve reparations? Do you think Chinese people got in the way and said Japanese don't deserve reparations? Do you think Vietnamese Americans or Cambodian or Filipino Americans got in the way of the Japanese claims for reparative justice for what happened to their ancestors? No. Do you see Jewish people saying that they don't deserve any reparations or any type of payments for what happened? They're getting money from our taxpaying dollars, and it wasn't even the United States that was killing the Jewish people. That was done in Germany. You don't see the pushback. What about the natives? Do you see other native tribes publicly denouncing the idea that they should be repaired for what happened to them? I'm talking about the red natives. We know that some of us were natives too. But do you see that happening? No. It's just, it's something that's unique to some of these tethers and negroids that look like us, that are willing to go against us getting the justice deserved. That's crazy in itself. That's why delineation is more important for us than any other groups, because other groups don't have self-sabotaging, self-sabotry the way we do. Let's go.
Ask us a slightly different question, because it's not reparations. It's about Joe Biden's student loan bailout. And I'm not going off, but it's a comparison point. 2/3 of the American people did not go to college. Is it okay for Joe Biden to say, well, we're going to forgive student loans, even though 2/3 did not go to college? It is now the debt burden of the 2/3 of the American people that did not go. I will tell you the answer is no. People may not like that, but that's the reality. And brother, I want to be respectful of you, because I understand the reparations argument. But we are now more than 150 years from the Emancipation Proclamation. We are easily 80 years from the end of the Jim Crow era. Who now? I just addressed it. I said no. Now I'm giving my answer. And here's the thing. So here's what I'm gonna say, because and I want to thank you for your.
Listen, the fact that we're 100 years past slavery and we still haven't got reparations is a problem in itself. And it's probably because of Negroes like this. But it doesn't even matter, because it's still a debt owed. People still benefit from the wealth that was built by our ancestors, period. There's no getting around that. See, if we were compensated for the work that we done building this nation, if we were credited for the inventions in the different industries that we created, including the musical industry, we wouldn't need reparations. We would be of the wealthiest of Americans. So they've been able to parlay our wealth and then shut us out of the same economic opportunities. And they still do that in a systematic way. So because they still directly benefit from it, it is time for them to compensate us. Period. But these tethers come here from different countries that they know that they're not going to get any piece of the pie, because if we were saying reparations for every single black person, they would not be against it. I guarantee you. These Jamaicans and Nigerians and Haitians, they would not be against it if they were included in it. But they're willing to sell us out just so that they can get welfare benefits that they get. They don't want anything messing up that. So they make all these excuses and they go public with their disdain and their willingness to go against our claims and to disagree with the validity of our reparations movement, which is crazy in itself, but they're willing to do that. Then they got people like this right here, Dr. Phil, who benefited from a black woman to be able to get platformed, who now wants to go against our reparations claim. This is about a year ago. This is from African Diaspora News, I think. The good brother there. Here we go. Dr. Phil says reparations will be a disaster if given to black Americans. And here's his argument.
Who has gotten rich off the back of a black woman had this conversation with Professor William Darity of Duke University in regards to reparations. Check it out.
If you take $350,000 or $840,000 and you write a check to any group of people, black, white, poor, homeless, whatever, you give any group of people that much money and say, there you go, best of luck, and you come back in 6 months, they're going to be broke. So
okay, so he's saying that if you give a substantial amount of money to people, 6 months from now they'll be broke. What if they're already broke? That's not a disaster. Then at least they had the money to run through. If they fuck it off, that's on them. But look at these ridiculous arguments when it comes to us. How come we're not saying that about Israel? Why aren't we saying this about Native Americans? Why aren't we saying this about Jewish people or LGBT or anybody else that gets special assets allocated towards them? But when it comes to reparations, it's going to be a disaster. If we give you guys hundreds of thousands of dollars, you'll just be broke in 6 months. Okay. Well, at least we had 6 months to live it up. And it stimulated the economy nonetheless. Because why are they broke? Because they spent it on something. So if they spent it on something, that means there's businesses that thrive because of that stimulus package, aka the reparations. Not only that, we know that not everybody's going to fuck off $300,000, $600,000, $800,000. We know that. A lot of us know what to do with that. Some of us will need a house and they'll get that. Some of us will start businesses. Some of us will put up and buy a bunch of land and then till that land, have the resources to actually develop that land. Some people may get their credit up so that now that they have more leverage in that regard. Will there be some people that fuck it off? Yeah, but that's their business to do so. We're not talking about a gift. We're talking about something that is owed to us. We're not talking about a hand-me-down or a handout or entitlement program. We're talking about what's owed to us. Something that is ours. The audacity of anyone to deny our claims for reparations, yet they're benefiting from what our ancestors did. Yeah, they could say that we personally weren't enslaved. So what? You personally still benefit from when our ancestors were enslaved. It's like if somebody stole my grandfather's house, still own the house generations later, and now I find out, hey, that's my grandfather's house. That's my great-grandfather's house that he left to me. You have it. That's like them saying, well, now giving you the house isn't going to help. You'll just be homeless in 6 months. Nah, homie, give me the fucking house. Get out the house. You've parlayed that house into wealth. You've borrowed against that house and started businesses. You've leveraged the value of that home. And I have not been able to do so. I'm paying rent and you own a home that is my family's home. We need that. If I steal a car and give it to my son, and then somebody else, next generation, says, hey, that's my vehicle, nobody's going to say, well, it's too late now. They're going to say, you are in ownership of stolen property. We must take that property back. And then they'll probably punish who's ever holding that property. Same thing. You guys are in violation. You guys are in possession of stolen goods. You've accumulated wealth through the works of my ancestors, and we need what's ours, period.
Whatever reparations are done, that would be an absolute disaster as opposed to guidance and help in creating generational wealth as opposed to income.
Right.
Okay, so like I said before, how come these people who are so against cash payments, who want to deflect to other methods of generational wealth building, why aren't they doing that then? If that's what they believe, if they believe it'd be better for us to have free education, why ain't they going that route then? Why ain't they saying, okay, we'll do that? Why aren't they saying, well, home ownership is the way that most generational wealth is passed down? Why don't we make it easier and do programs like they're doing with some of these immigrants to make sure that we could have home ownership? Why aren't they doing that? Because it's just a deflection. See, at the end of the day, most of the dominant society, they don't want to see us catch up. Because for us to catch up means we will pass them. They know with our innovation and what we've been able to do with nothing, if they give us something, we're going to pass them up on the social economic ladder. Which means that soon their kids will be working for our kids. Which means soon that we'll have the political leverage that will be setting the policies. Which means that we'll be able to control the industries that we built, the music industries, the technological industries. That's why they're so against it. This is why we have to, we got to do like Will said. Let's get back to this. Let's get back to this, man. We're going to have to do other means, including class action lawsuit.
It's the only viable path to obtaining reparations. They must fight for it, rather than wait for compensation to be handed out. However, uniting is the only effort required. Once united, it will become hard for the government to ignore, especially when the government loses legitimacy. To achieve reparations,
Facts.
Black Americans need to form a unified front across all states.
Let's go.
This means organizing and mobilizing communities to join a collective legal action.
And that's what the reparations rally and movements like that does. That's the importance of the new Black media and those of us who participate in it. It unites, delineates, and it raises the awareness.
A class action lawsuit is a powerful tool for addressing widespread harm, allowing a large group of people to collectively sue the U.S. government for reparations due to slavery and systemic racism. Here's a reminder to please support us so we can make more videos for you by subscribing to our channel and giving the video a like. We want to build a strong community, and we need your support. Let's continue now. One of the biggest legal bases is the 40 acres and a mule policy that was never followed but was promised to Black people. The Supreme Court can be asked to get this policy implemented, which will resolve all problems. If you don't know the power of a class action lawsuit, just understand that it can even make the president resign. This approach consolidates the claims of many individuals into a single powerful case. This unity amplifies the voices of Black Americans, making it harder for the government to ignore their demands. Unlike petitions or advocacy efforts that can be brushed aside, a court ruling in favor of the plaintiffs would legally mandate the government to provide reparations. The judiciary, as an independent branch of government, has the authority to enforce such a ruling, making it binding and actionable. Historical precedents demonstrate the power of legal action in securing justice. For example, the civil rights movement saw significant victories through the courts, such as the landmark Brown versus Board of Education case, which ended racial segregation in public schools. A single case changed everything forever.
Now, when we really look at it, what made some of the movements of the past successful was a mixture between raising the awareness on a grassroots level and also utilizing legal measures and attorneys that were on code with the movement. It took both, right? It took us delineating from participating in certain things, gathering and rallying, rioting sometimes or rebellion, and also using legal manners and measures as well. Same thing that we could do now. We raise the awareness. That's what the reparations rallies and all these different things that we're doing in social media and in our communities is doing. But at the same time, we got to couple that. Once we get the awareness level high enough, we have to couple that with actual legal actions. We have to neutralize some of the arguments that has been used against us in regards to reparations. We have to come up with these numbers. We have to show them. Show them stuff like this. Where's it at? Hold up. There we go. We got to show them stuff like this. Successful endeavors that we've done. Denver gave people experiencing homelessness $1,000 a month a year. Nearly half of participants had housing a year later. So they gave people in need cash payments, and within a year, over half of them had housing. So the Denver Basic Income Project released its first year results. The pilot program provided direct cash payments to over 800 Coloradans experiencing homelessness. Results showed 45% of participants secured housing, while $589,000 was saved in public service costs. So it saved money, and it helped 45% of the participants achieve housing. So these are the kind of different results that we have to show. What else do we got? Okay, this one's even more recent. Let's go. So Denver Basic Income Project gave homeless people cash and saved taxpayers almost $600,000 in the process, report says. Anecdotally, the Denver Basic Income Project has saved lives. According to new research, the first year pilot program that provided no strings attached cash to 807 homeless adults also saved taxpayers significant money. So in other words, it was a success. These are the type of successes that we have to continue to show, because the numbers say that. Like I said, when I was in college, I did the studies, right? I used to speak to the city council to try to get money for different. I was heavy into mentoring for years. And one thing about it is grassroots organizations really don't get funded the way they should. So we went to the Seattle City Council, and I prepared a speech intended to sway the council to alleviate some of the city money towards specifically grassroots nonprofits that deal with our youth. And one of the numbers and statistics that I used was the 1-to-11 ratio, meaning that if you put $1 into preventative measures and into early intervention measures, it will save $11 on the back end that it would cost to lock up or monitor or different things like of that nature. So what they ended up doing is awarding $1 million that they put into grants for grassroots organizations. Now they stopped it after a year, but whatever. It did have results. So this isn't like a new philosophy or a new understanding. This is something that's known. The reason why it's not followed as much as it should be is, like I said before, you're going to save the city. You're going to make the city $11 on every dollar that you invest, but that's not going to directly benefit an individual. So an individual politician or representative isn't going to directly benefit, so they're not really interested like that. But on a whole, it actually does benefit society. The savings manifested in program participants staying in homeless shelters less frequency, requiring fewer ambulance rides, emergency room visits, and hospital stays, and spending fewer nights in jail or drug and alcohol treatment centers. A report released Tuesday shows decreasing those categories added up to more than 589,000 saved, according to estimates from researchers with the Center of Housing and Homelessness Research at the University of Denver. For a project that has paid out $9.4 million to participants since it was launched, the total may not look like much. But Mark Donovan, the Denver Basic Income Project founder and executive director, is confident the stability the program has helped to create in many recipients' lives will only continue to bear fruit, both for them and the Denver community. Because what they're not doing is they're not, like, really all the money paid out went back to the community. So it's really more than the 589,000 that was saved in certain sectors. But where do you think that 9.4 million that was paid out went? It went right back to the economy. It circulated right back into the city of Denver. Whether they were paying rent, whether they were buying food, whether they were buying a car, whether they were whatever they were doing with that money went right back into the local economy. It stimulated the local economy, and it also helped people raise their standard of living. This would be no different if it was paid in reparations to FBA, descendants of slaves. Make no mistake. Let's go. Exactly what we're doing right now, right? So we're already participating in the first step. Now, part of the delineation means that we do have to differentiate between real grassroots organizations and those that have been put before us, like the NAACP, which has already shown that they're not really of us or for us. They're not FUBU, right? So some of these Black Lives Matter type of organizations, we know that they ain't really real. We can identify grassroots organizations, grassroots media, grassroots efforts, and from there other people will attach themselves to what we're doing. If we make it trend, if we make it cool, if they see the progress we're making, if they see that we co-sign it, a lot of people will latch on even from outside of our lineage to help push it. And we need that. We need white people that are going to be pro reparations, that will neutralize their own people from coming against us. We need that. The same way that we have some of our own that go against us, we need people that's going to neutralize other groups. We need some of these African and Caribbean immigrants that are down with us to not just support us, but also to neutralize their own, to identify their own detractors that we call tethers, identify and neutralize them, pave the way. And all these things will happen as we raise the awareness. Right. We need those from our own lineage and community to articulate the message, but we already have that. The grassroots new Black media gets more views than most mainstream media networks. It's more influential than most of these politicians. All these other reparations rallies and even Juneteenth celebrations that were put on by politicians and semi-celebrities, none of them were as successful or influential or got the same traction as the grassroots that we've put on. That lets you know that we are the culture. That's one of the missing pieces right there. Legal experts, attorneys. We need to get back to that spirit of attorney Alton Maddox, the late and great Johnny Cochran, because right now we got the Ben Crumps. We got some of these storm chasers that don't really stand on business. We need to procure legal masterminds again.
Educating
Too easy. Too easy with the proper legal representation. That is too easy. In fact, did y'all see this? Check this out. This is recent. So, like, the idea that slavery's been over for no, it ain't. Yeah, we know we celebrate Juneteenth as the day where the Union soldier pulled up in Galveston and let it be known that the war was won and slavery is over. But we know that slavery continued even after that, in a formal way and an informal way. In a legal way, because they made it with the 13th Amendment legal to use slave labor if you're convicted of a crime. But look at this. Look at this. White West Virginia couple forced their adopted black children to work as slaves and live in barn. This is recent. This is only a few days old. Look at this. So for those who say, oh, slavery's so old, no. You guys are still practicing this traditional anti-black slavery system even right now in the year 2024. Donald Ray Lance, 63, and Jean K. Whitefeather. That sounds like a native name, doesn't it? Of Charleston, West Virginia, pled not guilty to over a dozen charges after their kids were found locked in a shed after laboring on farmland. A wealthy white West Virginia couple have been accused of forcing their adopted black children to work as slaves and lived inside a locked barn. Donald Ray Lance, 63, and Jean K. Whitefeather, 62, of Charleston, West Virginia, they pled not guilty, blah, blah, blah. Kanawha County Circuit Judge Mary Claire Akers said the couple targeted their 5 kids, aged 16, 14, 11, 9, and 6, because of their race, and they were used basically as slaves. According to the original arrest report, October 16th, 14-year-old children were locked in a squalid 20 by 14 shed with no light, food, or running water, with the camera planted on top left corner of the room. The children, who smelled of body odor, were found wearing dirty clothes and sores on their feet after a wellness check was performed on the outhouse of Cheyenne Lane, or is that Cheney Lane, which had no way of being opened from the inside. So they were locked inside of a slave quarters. This is 2024. So ain't no statute of limitation ran out. They're still practicing this right now. The shed set on the grounds of the couple's 5-acre, 3-bedroom, $295,000 Sissonville property. They also own the 80-acre, $725,000 home in Tonnesket, Washington. That's here in my home state in the Northwest, where they say slavery never existed in the North. That's bullshit. Sojourner Truth was from New York. I've never heard of this town. I'm assuming it might be somewhere in Eastern Washington or something. But they sold it after they got arrested in Washington. So then they moved to West Virginia. And this is where they had these poor children locked up. Picture the backyard shed where 2 of the couple's teenage children were found. So they were enslaving black children. They adopted black children to use them as slaves, and who knows what else. There's no way to open the door from the inside. The cops found the kids without food or water. The kids were also forced to do manual labor on the surrounding farmland. Look at this. Pure evil. Pure evil. It's like a $5 Indian of some sort with a name like Whitefeather. I'm assuming that they, whatever. They pled not guilty on Tuesday to new charges they were facing. The couple were first arrested October 2023 after their adopted children were found locked in a shed on their property. Whitefeather stated that the barn where the girl 16 and boy 14 were found was a teenage clubhouse. She said, this is a teenage clubhouse right here. No running water, no electricity. Can't open it from the inside. It's a clubhouse. Look at this fuck shit. The mother told deputies the children, who were all homeschooled, actually liked the shed that they were locked in. They liked it. Remember, in the days of enslavement, in the worst time of chattel slavery, they made laws. They did public campaigns. They made precedents to mental health, stating that for a slave to try to run away, he must have suffered from drapetomania, because why would they want to run away? You'd have to be crazy to run away. They used to spread propaganda through the medical field, saying that black people don't really feel pain. So when we whip them, they're just yelling to be sensational. It doesn't really hurt them. They experimented on our women. That's how gynecology was developed. They would say that women don't feel pain, black women. They would say that black women are so promiscuous, you can't really grape them because they're just bed wenches. This is the kind of stuff that they would say back then. They would say that we liked it. We enjoyed it. That's why we hum and we sing while we're working. They love it. This is the propaganda that they would push back then, as you can see it seeping into today. And that really puts it in perspective why they always sexualize our women. This is why they promote certain artists over others. And a lot of us don't understand these traps. But this is all residual effects of slavery. The children were also forced to sleep on the hard concrete floor, they said. The criminal complaint stated if there was a medical emergency or fire, the children would be unable to exit the locked room to safety. Okay, I missed this paragraph or a sentence. The building only had a small RV porta potty and no running water, according to images. So, I mean, it was unsanitary. It had to be smelly. There's disease, plague, hard concrete floor, can't get out. No electricity, no running water. Court documents said neighbors reported that the children were forced into farm labor and were not allowed inside the main house. This is 2024, y'all. Filings also stated that the teenage boy found inside the outhouse smelled of body odor and had open sores on his bare feet. They didn't even give these kids shoes. They were really living in a time zone of antebellum slavery. Now, let me ask you a question, y'all. Do you think this is the only time and place recently that this has happened? You don't think somewhere in some backwood country down south or even up in the Midwest or even in the Northwest, obviously, that this still exists? You don't think they're still doing this in other places right now? 3 hours after finding the older children in the locked shed, deputies found the 9-year-old girl holed up in a locked inside the family's locked main house. Lance came home with the 11-year-old boy while White Feathers surrendered their 6-year-old girl to authorities who has been with friends at a couple's church. That's what the inside of the house looked like, or the outhouse, whatever looked like. Damn. The children were found by authorities with an array of health problems, and the photos were taken by White Feather's brother about a week following the arrest. We're talking about reparations. We're talking about an ongoing systemic and even personal disjustice done and currently still being done to our people. The new charges include a couple facing human trafficking of a minor child, use of minor child in forced labor, that's slavery, and child neglect, creating substantial risks of serious bodily injury or death. Their bond has now been set at $500,000 each, which is $300,000 more than the original bond. So $500,000 each. That's $1 million for the amount of their house, the one that they sold in Washington for $700,000, the one they own now for $300,000. That's reachable for them. They can leverage their property and be out. Think about that. 300. I mean, so their original charges were only 200,000. Family. I had the unfortunate event happened to where, I got charged with a city crime of malicious mischief because I broke a coffee pot when me and my ex got into it. They gave me $100,000 bail, not for hitting her, for breaking a coffee pot. $100,000 for a city court. And you're telling me $1,000 bond? So you want to talk about systematic injustice still perpetuating right now? Stop it. The latest indictment outlining the upgraded charges claims that the couple is guilty of human rights violations, alleging that the couple forced their children into hard labor because of their race. Kanawha County Circuit Judge McClare told Metro News that this case is the first of its kind that she has seen in her career, and that the couple's original bond of $200,000 was insufficient compared to the severity of their crimes. But of course, they're undercharged. We're overcharged. See, this is what we're talking about, man. Our claims for reparations is valid. Along with human trafficking and neglect, was serious risk of bodily injuries or death. I don't find the bond to be sufficient, so that's why they raised it. And look at these devilish, evil crackers right here. Look at them. They don't even have any remorse. Look at them. Human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race and that they were used basically as slaves, from what the indictment charges. The minors involved were aged 16, 14, 11, 9, and 6. The indictment suggests that the 3 of the adopted children were black. That 3 of them? Okay. Prosecutors previously raised concerns that the couple's joint $400,000 bond money in February might have come from their alleged human trafficking activity. So the money that they made was enough to get them out of jail, what they're saying. Kanawha County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Christopher Krivoniak reported that the couple, who previously claimed to have no assets or income, sold their 80-acre ranch in Washington State for $725,000 on February 2nd. So they were able to leverage their property to get out. That is one of the benefits of white supremacy, that they have access to wealth to even leverage themselves, even when they are convicted of crimes. Without that, they had also sold their home in Sissonville, where they were arrested for $300,000. So they have property. Who knows how much more property they have? Prosecutors concluded that despite whether or not the money was obtained legally, it was originally intended for human trafficking. Deputies say there are no prior criminal charges. Is it because they didn't commit any prior criminal acts? No. They just haven't been charged. They haven't been caught. They literally, in 2024, are practicing slavery against black kids. See, this is the kind of stuff that should really inspire our reparations claims. This is why this is important. Outhouses on the property, Cheney Lane. The couple sold the home December 2023 after they had been initially arrested. This is only 6 months ago. The complaint was made back May 2023 about the couple, and a second complaint was made in September. So if it wasn't for people who witnessed this personally, that got involved, like, what if their neighbors didn't care? This would still be going on. In both cases last year's deputies said that they did not find any wrongdoing when they made a trip to the West Virginia home. They said that they saw the children inside the home, and on one occasion they were eating dinner. So deputies went there to, quote unquote, investigate, found no wrongdoing. Yeah. So how much did they really investigate if they missed 6 children in the outhouse where children were locked up? Or were they just on code and didn't give a damn? It's probably the latter. CPS was also called on the family, according to the neighbor, Stacy Miller. Miller told West Virginia Watch that she witnessed the kids out in the yard with their heads down and forced to stand in a straight line. She described what she saw as forced manual labor, also known as slavery, by the way. Let me see something. Neighbor Miller said that she never heard back from CPS about the worries. In other words, somebody actually said, hey, there's slavery going on next door. CPS was like, oh, is that right? Are they black? Oh, okay. Thanks for letting us know. Nothing. But they'll try to take a black kid away if he gets bad grades or if he gets in a fight at school or skips school. Neighbor Miller said that she never heard back. Blah, blah, blah. I'm supposed to do the right thing and call for a government entity that us taxpayers fund to not feel like I was listened to at all. That's heartbreaking for me. So that's wasted taxpayer money. So for all the talk that, oh, it's not, right for the taxpayers to have to pay for reparations. Well, we're paying for shit that we don't even really get. We're paying for shit that don't even really work. The couple's initial bond money is now in the custody of the court. Buzzy, blah. White Feather's attorney, Mark Plant, said that at a hearing in February, the main allegation is these children were locked in a shed. The evidence is going to show that there was a key inside. This case on its face sounds atrocious. However, there are two sides to every story. So in other words, they're saying like, hey, man, these kids weren't done that bad. There was a key inside. They could have got out. But no, it doesn't matter if there was a key inside. They said there was no access from within the confines to get out. You can only be let out from the outside. So, yeah, this is what's going on right now, man. And while we have stuff like this going on, we have detractors like this. Let's go back to this I'm going to close this up in a minute. Because this is part of what we're going to have to neutralize that's coming against us by the Tether class and the Coon class. Morris World TV, which you're probably familiar with. Doing everything he can to come against our movement. Look at the title of this. Just look at the energy, the energy and the vibration of these titles. California, 12 million for reparations program. Ha ha ha. I said it before and I'll say it again. It's all for show. No reparations for descendants of slaves. Now what? So look how happy he is to be able to report, anytime we get a challenge put in our way or denied something. These detractors, they celebrate this. Not just report on it, they celebrate it. And some of them claim that they have the actual solutions to how we can get reparations because everything we're doing as FBA is just not working. They know how to really do it, but there's no motion that they're participating in to actually do that. That's what we're up against, man. This is the kind of things that we have to delineate from and that we have to identify and neutralize. Now, the good thing is, no matter what, all of these detractors, all these coons, all these tethers, these agents that come against us, they really ain't got no motion. They really don't have the influence that we have. For what it's worth, they don't. The grassroots is really what controls the yard, as the Black Authority would say. The world really gravitates to what we are doing, not our detractors. Our detractors don't have any influence. We do. So we can still get the allies in high places and in far places for whatever it is that we are on. Whatever we're codified on, whatever we're building on, we can get support. So let me end it with this. Like I said, I'll show you this. Let me see. Where's it at, man? Okay. Let's go to this real quick. I want to show you one of the homies out of Denver, since I showed you about that UBI program. let me show you this right here. This is a grassroots, like part of what we're gonna have to do to be able to make this reparations movement is, of course, we're gonna have to get it, raise the awareness. We have to neutralize detractors. We have to procure legal help, and we're also going to have to procure our own grassroots candidates. And this is one out of Denver, as y'all know. Jesse Paris, aka Shane Nkrumah, from Frontline Black News, who's in an article here. It's an opinion category. It says Black LGBT candidates square off in Colorado State House District 8. So they're saying this because I know the way it's worded, it almost sounds like they're calling him an LGBT candidate. No, he's the black candidate. He's up against an LGBT candidate who's trying to use that homophobic trope against them. Let's go ahead and read the article. There's a clear, well-bankrolled front runner in the race for Colorado State House District 8, and it's not Jesse LaShawn Paris. But Paris, a formerly homeless man who lives at Fusion Studios, wants to be seen as an underdog in the district. He says has priced out its historically black neighbors. He said his opponent, Lindsey Gilchrist, is A&L, I think it just meant is in LGBTQ activist backed by the Democratic Party. In other words, they're putting the money behind the LGBT against the black candidate. Of course. Lindsey is determined to tackle some of the state's most pressing issues, including reforming the criminal justice system, safeguarding LGBTQ rights, and implementing robust gun violence prevention policies to protect our children. Lindsey and her wife are also foster and adoptive parents and know personally how important it is for youth, particularly youth in foster care, to have access to mental health services. Improving the child welfare system will be a central priority for her. So she's gay, but they want to adopt children, which kind of goes against the nature of being LGBTQ, right? Like if you're innately homosexual, that means that the idea of procreation and raising children should be a foreign concept that you can't relate to. But of course, they always want to adopt. And then what do you think is going to happen if kids grow up in a household with two same-sex parents? So that's their way of perpetuating. Because listen, if they didn't do things like this, in a generation or two, there'd probably be, you know what I'm saying, man. Here we go. Paris believes black issues will resonate more with the district than LGBTQ rights, as it should. Her focus is on the multi-trillion-dollar agenda of LGBTQ plus legislation, rights, and protections in all manners and facets, as well as black welfare. Paris stated in a news release, while these are admirable causes, they represent her interests and the values of those she feels are vulnerable. The black community has perceived a significant bias in favor of Gilchrist, with Democratic leaders in high places already guaranteeing her a win. So that they're putting the money behind the LGBTQ. But look, man, and this is what I've said before, man. Anything that helps the people, especially when it comes to black people, right? This is why I'm against the idea of black people jumping on the the rainbow bandwagon, because anything that's going to benefit black people is going to benefit black people, rather they're gay or straight. But anything that benefits gay people doesn't necessarily benefit black people. All right. So anyway, this is just the article. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but look at this. Paris not homophobic because, of course, because he's stomping down on a B1 platform and criticizing some of the policies of the LGBTQ, whatever. They're going to call him homophobic because that's, it's kind of like saying that you're, what's that, Jewish phobic, anti-Semitic, right? As soon as you say that, as soon as you label somebody that, it's supposed to be a bad thing, everybody jumps away from you, and it's going to disparage anything that you're trying to do. It's going to discredit you. So Paris has had to dodge allegations of homophobia, which he denies. Jesse is critical to the multi-trillion industry promoting unrealistic ideations that fuel the mental health industrial complex and unnecessary medical transformations. In other words, okay, which often cause more trauma and confusion. That what's wrong about that? So he's saying he's basically against the idea that a child can get surgery to change their sex, or the idea that somebody can identify as something that they're not. Okay. So he's critical of that. He's not saying that he's not wishing death upon them, or he doesn't like them, or that there's something bad should happen to him. The news release states he opposes the indoctrination of public school children with these ideologies by teachers presenting their perceived truths and the enforced use of pronouns that may not align with one presentation. In other words, he's against the idea that children, nonetheless, can identify with whatever sex they want, being pushed by parents, because no child on its own comes to the conclusion that, oh, I'm not really a boy, I'm a girl. They don't come to those conclusions on their own. That is something that's been planted in and pushed by indoctrination. This is why they have drag queens reading book stories at elementary school. I mean, just notice that you've never had children trying to identify as a different sex before recently. Even if they, you know what I'm saying, like, even if you want to say that homosexuality presents itself before you're of legal age, no one ever tried to say that they didn't feel like they're the sex that they are. Oh, I identify as being a giraffe. I'm asexual. I'm G-sexual. I'm no sexual, non-binary. None of that stuff happened until these things were presented and these ideas were planted by using celebrities, corporations, teachers. Jesse believes that legislative benefits and protections for certain groups should not overshadow the ongoing terrorization and neglect of Black Americans due to systematic anti-Black racism. He's standing on business, y'all. So these are the type of local politicians that we have to procure support so that we can elevate them. We need to get more of them that are codified so we can have representation in local government, state government, federal government. We need lawyers. We need to raise the awareness. We need to push for lawsuits on every level. I don't like the idea of choosing which group is more marginalized. Black people. Okay, that's from the actual writer of the article. So anyway, I just want to share that stuff with you guys, man. So there we go. Can we get reparations? Is it achievable? I believe it is. We need to continue to push. First level is raising awareness, what we've been doing very well. We're also going to have to get grassroots organizations to support. We're going to have to get attorneys to support. We're going to have to get people even from outside our group, but we're also at the same time going to have to neutralize detractors, tethers, clones, white supremacists who try to neutralize our movement. With that said, I'm out. B1.